Hi, everybody. So in case you need some review on today's math lesson or you weren't able to join our call, I have this lesson recorded for us. So I'm just going to go through the steps of each problem, and you can pause or review any of the problems as you need on your own. So the weather in different parts of the United States has a noticeable effect on plants and trees. In warm parts of the country, trees can keep their leaves all year long. In the northern states, fall weather causes leaves to change color. People from around the country plan trips to see and photograph the red, yellow, orange, and brown leaves. A fall leaf viewing trip could involve driving through national forests, biking along a rail trail, or hiking into the mountains. Number 1 says, one popular park to photograph leaves in autumn is Macedonia Brook State Park in Kent, Connecticut. The Yellow Trail is the shortest hiking trail and is 51/100ths mile long. What is this fraction written as a decimal? So since there's no whole number here, we're going to put a 0 in our ones place and a decimal point, because we know that if there were a whole number, we would have a decimal point here. 51/100ths is also saying we have 5 10s and 1 100ths. So it's 51 right after the decimal point, and our units are mile long. Okay, so we would read this as 0.51 mile long. That's 51/100ths of a mile. The Rogers family is visiting Massachusetts to see the leaves change color. The Old Eastern Marsh Trail is 1 2/5 miles long. The Bradford Rail Trail is 1 3/10 mile long. The Rogers family wants to take the longer trail. Which trail should they take? So first, we're going to write a comparison statement. 1 2/5 compared to 1 3/10. Now we know that we can't compare fifths and tenths. So on the side here, we're going to write our comparison statement with a little bit more space so that we can do some conversions with our fractions. I'm going to make our fifths into tenths because that's our closest common denominator. I'm going to multiply by 2 halves, or 1 whole, to get to tenths. So my whole number stays the same. 2 times 2 is 4, and 5 times 2 is 10. So I have 4 tenths. And then I'm going to compare that with 1 3/10. I don't need to change this fraction because it's already tenths, so it remains the same. Now I can compare 1 4/10 with 1 3/10, and I know that 1 4/10 is larger or greater than 1 3/10. So that means that the Old Eastern Marsh Trail is the longer trail, and we can abbreviate that to Old Eastern Marsh. That's fine. Okay? Moving on to the next, we're going to need to use this map, and it's a little hard to see on my screen here, but use your book and you'll be able to follow along just fine. Joshua and Lily are going north to participate in a walking tour in Clarkson Park to photograph the leaves. Here's the trail map of the different walking trails. So we need to write the length of the west trail as a fraction. So the west trail is right here on the side here, and it's 2.9 miles. If I write that as a fraction, I'm going to start with my whole number, 2, okay? And then I have 9/10. This decimal point tells us 9/10. So it's 2 and 9/10. in our units is miles. Number 4, which trail is shorter, the west trail or the north trail? Write the comparison using greater than, less than, or equal to. So our west trail is this trail here, and I'm going to keep it in fraction form because the north trail is also in fraction form. So I'm going to write 2 9/10. My comparison circle, and looks like 2 3/5. Okay, and again, I can't compare tenths and fifths without converting my fractions. So over here on the side, I'm going to write both fractions, 2 9/10 compared to 3 5/5. And I'm going to change my fifths into tenths so that I can more easily compare these fractions. 2 9/10 stays the same, and 2 3/5 becomes 2 6/10. Now I can more easily compare these two fractions. So 2 is the same, so I need to move into my fraction, and when the denominator is the same, I compare the numerator. 9 is larger than 6, so it's 2 9/10 is greater than 2 6/10. Or 2 9/10 is greater than 2 3/5. And since it asks us to write the comparison, all I'm going to do is that. I'm not going to add which trail is shorter. That's just fine. All right. The next one says to write the length of the lower trail as a fraction. So the lower trail is this one right here, and it's 1.4 miles long. So again, I start with my whole number, and it's 1, and this 0.4 tells us 4/10. So it's 1 4/10 miles. Okay. Number 6 asks which trail is longer, the lower trail or the south trail, and write the comparison. So the lower trail is 1.4 or 1 4/10, and the south trail is 1 4/8. So I'm going to write both in fraction form. 1 4/10 is compared to 1 4/8. Okay. Now I can't compare tenths and eighths without converting. So again, I'm going to write them on the side here. 1 4/10 is compared to 1 4/8. And I can easily change these both into 80ths by multiplying by the denominator of the other one. So eighths and tenths, I get 1 32/80ths is compared to 1 40/80ths. Then we put in our comparison symbol because 40 is larger than 32. So 1 4/10 is less than 1 4/8. We can also use our logical brain that we talked about a couple weeks ago by saying, well, I know that 4/8 is half and 4/10 is less than half. So we can think about it that way as well. Number 7 says, write a fraction that is equivalent to the length of the north trail. And the north trail, we did the math up here, is 2 3/5. Or 2 6/10. You can also find an equivalent fraction by multiplying and making an improper fraction. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 3 would be 13/5. That's also the same. Or we can multiply 3/5 by tens and make it 2 30/50. Those are all equivalent to 2 3/5. Now, we're going to use the trail map to determine which of these points are each trail. So first, let's start with which trail is equal to 1 1/2. It gives us this benchmark here. We have 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, and 3. So D, trail D, resides at 1 1/2 miles long. If we look at our trail map, and we've already talked about it, the south trail is equivalent to 1 1/2. So I can go back down and put the south trail here. Okay. Then if we look at E, it's just larger than 1 1/2 miles. So we'll go back up. We've used the south trail, so we're going to cross that one off. And we're going to try and decide which of these is just larger than 1 1/2. So first we need 1 in our whole number, so it can't be the west trail and it can't be the north trail. So it's either the upper trail, the mid trail, the lower trail, or the east trail. And knowing what I know about fractions, 1 and 1.4 is less than 1 1/2. So it's not the lower trail. 1 1/6 is also less than 1 1/2. So it's not that. And the same goes for 1 1/3. So it must be the upper trail, 1 3/5 miles. Now, if we go to G, G is very close to 3. Not quite to 3, but it's very, very close. So we need a trail. Erase these. We need a trail that is close to 3. So our two trails that are in 2 are 2 3/5 or 2.9. And if you guess that the west trail is closer to 3, you're correct. The west trail, 2.9, is closer to 3 than 2 3/5. So we've used the west trail. So the north trail must be the last trail after 2, because that's the only other trail that is larger than 2. Okay, finally we have A, B, and C, and we're less than 1 1/2, but more than 1. So let's start with A. You want to look and see which trail is the smallest fraction. And we can use, with these two fractions here, we're comparing unit fractions. So when we know that we're comparing fractions with the same numerator, the smaller denominator is the smaller fraction piece. So 1 1/6 is smaller than 1 1/3. So the mid trail is letter A. Now, we talked about 1.4 being very close to 1 1/2, but not quite to 1 1/2. So we can decide that the lower trail must be C because it's closer to 1 1/2. Leaving the east trail to be letter B. So that's the end of this math unit. If you need help, don't be afraid to ask or jump on another Zoom call to ask for help. Make sure that you're doing your math homework page that goes with this, and that is page 173, and it's just comparing fractions and making sure that you're able to convert fractions to compare with like denominators.